Hi, my name is Sylvia Matiko.
And I am Pat Moore, and we are co-authors of Lemons to Lemonade.
Lemons to Lemonade is a story about my journey from a successful business career to the foot of the cross. Being raised in a spiritually split home, I was never so glad to get out of Andrews University and get out of the Adventist bubble. I wanted nothing more to do with Seventh-day Adventists. So I left and I did my own thing, and I thought it was great. Now I was free. And in my early 20s, I became a vice president of the world-famous Ripleys Believe It or Not. I thought that I had it made. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I had a wonderful life. I had a wonderful husband, a great job. I was traveling around the world. I had furs. I had jewels. What more could a girl ask for? But after a couple of years, I started to feel really empty inside, and I didn't know why. And that's when the downward spiral started. Still denying God's existence, I started to search. And I searched and I went looking into Buddhism. I became an atheist. I started looking into New Age things. Nothing would satisfy. And until I hit rock bottom, did I ever consider once that maybe, just maybe, there was a God up there who'd be willing to help me. It's about a loving God who will do anything to get us back by using people and circumstances. And it doesn't end after your baptism, because it's hard trying to get back into church. It's about a learning process that for me continues to this day. It's about my mistakes, my triumphs, and how I handled some of those really hard questions that sometimes we're all afraid to ask. And having presented my story at a weekend retreat, I was asked by numerous people if I intended to write a book. The thought had never even crossed my mind. Throughout the next year at various speaking engagements, I got asked the same question. So I asked my dear friend, Pat Moore, who is a writer, if she would consider writing the book.
My initial response to Sylvia's request was, I don't think so. Although I'd been writing for publication for a couple of years and had some articles published, I'd never even considered writing a book. Sylvia was sure, however, that I was the person to tell her story. She said since I knew her so well and I had been involved in the journey, I was the only person she would trust to put her words on paper. So I agreed to think about it. I was reluctant for several reasons. First, I had never written a work of this length. Second, I was worried it might adversely affect our friendship. And third, I knew that if this story was to be told the way it should be, that I would need divine guidance and help to find the right words to express her story. So I remember I started a dialogue with God about it, and I remember one Friday evening I was sitting in my recliner in the living room, and suddenly I had the beginnings of the first chapter. The paragraphs just seemed to write themselves, and I knew right then that I had an answer, that God did want me to write this book, and that He would help me find the words I needed. I didn't tell Sylvia about my decision until after I'd completed the first chapter. I wanted to be sure that I could handle it before I got her hopes up. I remember one Sunday afternoon I called her on her cell phone and said, "Sylvia, guess what?" She responded with such a squeal of delight, disbelief, and shock, I think you could have heard her across the miles between us. Sylvia's story touches hearts whenever she tells it, and those hearts have requested to see her story in written form. We wrote the book in response to those requests. We wrote the book to encourage anyone who might be struggling day to day. Whether or not you're a successful business person, if you're feeling empty and you don't know what your next step should be, we think this is the book you need to read.
Surprisingly, we have also found that this book really gives encouragement to families with loved ones outside of the church. There is hope that your loved one can return. I'm living proof. But in the end, it's all about God, how He craves to have a relationship with us, and He won't give up. Praise Him for that. We really hope that every reader will be touched by God's phenomenal, loving heart.